And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. I caught myself a little bit off guard there because I didn't set myself up with preview and go live mode. But my name is Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard, and skincare alchemy in the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games, help amazing players find great designers whose games they can love. We do that in a lot of different ways, but my favorite way is to sit down with a designer or somebody in the industry, talk to them about the work we do. Today we're talking about both of those things. We're going to talk a little bit about the work of our guest as well as some of the things they're doing to help other people's work flourish within the space. And that person is John Battle, better known as Bats by a lot of people. Bats, thanks for joining us today. Why don't you tell people a little bit about who you are, what you do, where they can find you online?
My name is John. People, I think, know me better as Bats online. I'm honestly not sure how people how people refer to me, but I've been making games for a while. Over on nerves.store, which is my sort of like little place on the internet where I sell most of my stuff. I recently finished up the crowdfunding for The Wizards in the Waste, which is an older book of mine that I'm sort of bringing back for a second edition, a rework. And it's going to be really pretty. I'm still waiting for the books to come to me, but when they do, they're going to be super gorgeous, and they're going to make me, really famous for sure. So
Famous and wealthy, I'm sure. That's why everybody
millions.
That's why everybody gets into RPGs. The huge amount of money they make, the individuals who work on them.
It's flabbergasting.
Well, chat universally calls you Bats so far, with Fiona coming in and saying that she calls you Bats, and so that's universal agreement right there. And
I like it. It's a good name. So.
So tell us a little bit about. I know we're going to talk about a lot of things, but I'm a big fan of making sure we do a good job of covering like whatever the most recent thing you've been working on that might make you money is. So tell us a little bit more about Wizards, what it is, and kind of what caused you to do this kind of reprint of it and expansion and beautification of an already pretty phenomenal project.
Yeah, well, so the Wizards was one of the very first things I ever had in print. It was sort of the first thing that people, I think, noticed from me in a bigger way that sort of led to me being able to do this kind of work full time. I like to call it a game of arcane bargaining because it's basically just there's no set rules for the spells. You basically create your own spells. And then depending on what you wager for those spells will determine exactly how powerful they are. And then the book is just kind of designed to throw a bunch of problems at you and then see if you can solve them without sort of succumbing to the corruption of magic or something. There's a bunch of different ways that the game kind of has you in these different chokeholds while you're trying to cast spells. So it's a game about talking, game about magic. And I wanted to sort of redo it and reprint it and kind of refine the rules and add some stuff because I've learned a lot, I guess, since I first released it, mainly in the layout, in the ideas of layout, but also just with writing and different things like that. And I had been inspired by just some paintings I found on Pinterest, I think it was. And I saw them and I was like, this is what I would do if I started to, if I wanted to rework it. And then I just kept thinking that until that thought kind of snowballed into me having the time to do it after the last Kickstarter I ran last year. So I spent most of last year, the end of last year, I guess, reworking it and getting it ready for this year. Yeah.
Awesome. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more after we talk about a couple other things, but you also slow funded it on your site. You're one of the first people to really start using your own internal site in a really refined way to start doing that. And I can't wait to dive into talking about that, but go check it out over at nerves.store, along with another project that's slow funding there right now, that we're actually going to have Amanda, who's the creator of Crush Step Apparition, on Wednesday to talk about. So
Awesome.
it's a nerves.store week here on Plus One EXP. JP. But I'm super excited about it. Also, JP, I just saw that you mentioned in the chat, JP Couvert, it said they're very excited for the book. JP, I'm very excited about your projects, and I need you to drop me a link on where to get them because I did not back them last year on Zine Quest, and they were already gorgeous, and now I'm seeing everybody get their hands on them, and I need them. Send me a link, please. That said, we'll talk more about slow funding, JP. What you mean by that? A few other things, but it is Zemo right now. It's Zine month. Distinctive from Zine Quest or other things. The reality is that Kickstarter kind of pulled back and said, hey, we're not going to do Zine Quest now. We're going to do it later, 3 weeks before everybody was planning on running a project. There was also the blockchain decision. A lot of people pivoted. But all month long, as we have guests, we're asking them to tell us about a couple of their favorite projects. We're talking about a couple of our favorite projects as part of our Prestige Class interview series all month long. So anytime you come on over the next month, if we're interviewing somebody, you're going to hear about some of the Zine Month projects they're fans of. You can check all of the projects out at zinemonth.com is the best place to check that out. But let's look at some of the ones that Bats liked, some of the ones I wanted to talk about. Bats, we'll start with one of yours. You picked two that I am very excited about that we have not talked about yet. The first one was the Archon Ruins. So talk to me about the Archon Ruins, a little bit about what it is, the creator, anything you know, or just what got you excited about it.
Yeah, well, the creator is actually somebody who I guess, followed for a bit. And then actually got to work with on my last project, which was super exciting. They got to draw some maps, which were really fun to write for. But yeah, they're an artist slash writer slash creator who I feel like has done some really good work that has, sadly flown under the radar, I feel like, of like a greater crowd. And this project in particular, I was interested in it because I saw the map and immediately was reminded of Shadow of the Colossus, which is like a huge game from my childhood, hugely influential. And so I commented on the Twitter post, and he had said that was one of his inspirations for it. And so we talked a little bit about it, but I backed it because it looks like a good adventure area. Like, it seems like something that you can pick up and you can run for your group, which I have over the years put a lot more of my attention into, because those are, I feel like, the things that come in clutch. If it's Monday night and you're about to run a game, if you have a whole mess of these adventures that you can just kind of grab and run really easily with a nice map that you can show people, it takes the load off a lot. And besides that, his art and his writing has always kind of hit in that perfect spot for me of not being too dense, but also giving you enough information. So I'm really excited to see the full thing, which it has funded, but there are stretch goals for like more content, which I'm also hoping it hits. If not, I might have to try to donate again.
Yeah, I still have not gotten on this one yet, and I need to. But their next goal is at $1,200. That 18 extra artifacts. Alex, Gnarled Monster, the creator, he was one of our itch funding contributors. He and Lucas Rollum are doing a standalone adventure for Through the Void.
Nice.
Together with each other, which will work for pretty much the same thing. It'll work for pretty much any system. So I picked two creators who I'm like, hey, I'd love either of you to do this, and so why don't I just team you both up to do something? Yeah, I'm really excited, and we didn't hit that funding goal, but we were within $200, and so we're gonna do it anyways. Like, that's like anything you can do. That's a nice thing about slow funding. I can just be like, yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like, in the next 2 weeks, and we've since then passed that goal. Since the end of that funding process, we passed that where that goal would have been. So I'm super excited to see what they come up with in the depths of space. But yeah, they're Borderlands zines. That's why I turned around a second ago. It's usually right behind me on my shelf. But I'm excited about it. The next one we're going to talk about is one of mine. It's a Banda's Grove, which you go to bandasgrove.com to check it out. But you also can go over to the itch phase for Pantheon Games and check it out and go ahead and support it directly. This is a creator who I met through the Brain Trust. They reached out to me early on. It's currently itch funding. It has not hit its goal. It's a very cool, very expansive project that is a belonging outside belonging game that mixes some hex crawl and hex mapping elements in. There's some cards. This game's going to have a very cool kind of print and play, but very much a very phenomenal kind of table presence to it also. So it's about this campground. So there's like a lot of cozy slice of life stuff, but then you're walking around from section to section of the campground, and each one has different quantum elements that are coming into it and different things that are happening in it. It's very inspired by Wander Home and We Sail Beyond, which are two games I love that came out last year. The pastoral reality of Wander Home, but then We Sail Beyond is for anybody who's running Down We Go or doing dungeon crawl work or wants to do a cool one-off thing like a session 0 project with your players. We Sail Beyond is about creating a mostly accurate map for your players, and then a very accurate map for the GM about a section you're about to explore. And so Banda's Grove kind of combines those things and creates a quantum campground for you to explore together. It's also got artwork by Tony Tran, who is somebody who like I had heard of right at the end of last year for the first time, and I'm seeing their artwork pop up all over the place, and it's so gorgeous and such a varied style that I'm very, very excited about it. So I don't know if you had a chance to. You said you hadn't heard about this one before, right? Right, Bats?
Yeah, but I mean, I've been reading it since you sent it to me, and it does. It kind of seems to hit that perfect sort of like just combining two ideas together to make something that is both obviously inspired but also unique. And the hex crawl thing is what makes me want to get behind this thing and help it get funded, because I'm kind of curious what that will look like in play. That seems like it could be a really fun thing that could maybe inspire more people down the road, which is always it's always worth investing in.
And to take a system that's very classically story game and take a very kind of OSR concept and drop it in the middle as a hook is a very cool thing. I was very immediately like, have you sent this to like Matt and Jay to look at, because I think they both would jam on this. But it tickles very different parts of the brain, and again, I'm very, very excited for it. They haven't hit they hit their $500 goal. They've got a $700 goal, so they have funded. What they're working on is their $900 goal right now. They're getting really close to it, and then they've got a few more stacked up after this, but go check it out. It's I dropped it in. Also, all the links will be in the description for this on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're watching this later, hop over to one of those places. You can grab all these links, or just Google them because they're pretty easy to find also too. And if you don't get it from the first Google result, type in RPG afterwards, and usually it'll pop up. Let's talk about Discordantopia, which was your second choice.
Yeah, so this is one that I think I even backed it before I realized it was a zine month thing, just because it looked. I saw the map of the city that they had put on Twitter, which shows like this huge towering city, much like the city in like Heart or Spire, which same city but different books. It seemed very high fantasy. And then it's also Troika, and Troika I find very interesting. It's also sort of based off of, I think it's pronounced Cairn or Karn, however that one is pronounced, which is very low. Well, I guess they're very easy to introduce people to. They're very easy games to pick up. Not as many mechanics to like look up or think about. And so taking that and then making this like crazy looking high fantasy city, that's something that I've been interested in a very long time, and to see somebody do that had me immediately excited. So
yeah, Sage has been doing a really good job of just kind of sharing this. The art's super evocative. I have been very excited about this one also too. And also I loved that it's the fact that it's got Karen elements. It's got like some Into the Odd kind of implied setting, anti-canon pieces, which we love in a lot of our games. And then the compatibility with both Troika and Polka, which I didn't realize Polka was Oz's one of Oz's like deconstructions of that. I'd seen it a couple times, but didn't realize that. And so went through and finally got a chance to read it. And it's a very cool dice pool shift for Troika instead. And I love the vibe on this, and I think it would jive in any kind of rules light OSR story forward like game. I think there's a lot of different places you could play this in, and would just be a cool place to pick up and explore and start to map out that big weird city all on your own. I like Roland typed in the chat. I think it's pronounced Karen. which doesn't help us at all because we're still reading it. So, the last one we're going to talk to you before we talk about Wizards a little bit more and slow funding specifically is Fabled Path by the person who made it, whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce because there are no vowels in it, but it comes from the team at Signum Nox. We're trying to get them on. They are very camera shy, but a lot of people have been encouraging them. And so Alex T, who is also very camera shy, but came on recently, is a friend of theirs and encouraging them. It has funded. It is over on Kickstarter. So if people aren't back in Kickstarters right now, I would just stick this one in your brain to pick up whenever it's on a different platform. But it's got about a week left to go. But it's a set of old school sandbox and solo and group play procedures for kind of any OSR game. Kind of really saying, what if we went back to the Arnesian like style of play and looking at how we group procedures and other things together to make this specific game that we want to play. Kind of classic old school look to it. Everything about it looks and just is exactly the type of stuff I like in a game where it's like, hey, here's a lot of options. Pick the ones that make sense right now and leave the rest on the table. That's what I love. But I'm also a big fan of. I don't like leaving blanks. I'm fine with negative space. I'm fine with intentional negative space. If there's an empty page in my book, I tend to want to do something with it, and I tend to want to give people something on that page. And a lot of what I will gravitate to is here's a worksheet that I think helps the GM or player or table think through what they want to do more intentionally. And so the fact that a lot of this is deployed in a format that matches a lot of my design style also too, with some of the like game sheets and other pieces that come with it, is a huge piece. But it's classic format of like, here are the core rules, here are the monsters, here are the setting guides. Like I said, I think it's a great. It's pronounced Flux. Look, they've got a pronunciation guide on their name.
Oh, look at
so
that.
It's Flux. The V is a U. Is the one who's putting this out. Very, very cool project. Again, I think hitting a lot of what Zine Quest was trying to do early on and potentially could have done well if, without a lot of malfeasance, was kind of pull back some of that classic feel of zines. And I think this kind of kills it with that. So anything that jumped out to you from the page?
Yeah, I was going to mention that it seems to have that 3 booklet thing that you mentioned, which I've always found. Um, it is a little maybe frivolous, but it's also like very iconic. It's like just the fact that it uses 3 different booklets to kind of do that standard old school Gygax kind of thing. That alone kind of gives you the vibe of what it's going for.
Right.
And with all the worksheets, that also kind of feels very, very Gygax in a way. And I don't know, it seems like something that would be fun to try and it says it's a micro sandbox. So I'm really curious to see what exactly the micro part means,
Right.
but
Right.
any amount of sandbox I think is good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just getting into the sandbox and playing around. So, um, we're gonna talk. We'll talk about Crutch Depth. Micah, you got to make sure you come back on Wednesday. We're gonna have Amanda on specifically to talk about Crutch Depth. But let's talk a little bit more. We're gonna talk some more about Wizards because it was kind of your first your first step into this. But let's talk a little bit about one of the big shifts that's happened recently in the space, and that was Kickstarter has made a very nebulous, and even though we were all going to know by the end of January exactly what it meant, it's February, and we don't. Statement about blockchain. It wasn't the first time Kickstarter's done something to jerk around creators. Zine Quest got moved. And I don't know if your move to crowdfunding on your site was a response to that. I don't know if it was just, hey, we were already kind of looking at some of these pieces and now we want to get over. Talk to me a little bit about, for you, if and how that shift impacted you and the move over to saying, hey, we want to fund Wizards and now Crush Depth over on the Nerves store rather than using another platform. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, I would say it's probably a little of both. I had been wanting to, I feel like the goal for me has always been to use Kickstarter to, I mean, as the name implies, kickstart a career that I could then shift to doing pre-orders and then just shift from that to just ordering the books and selling them. Due to things that had happened last year, um, it had become impossible for me to make that shift, or it was scary, I guess, to make that shift. And then Kickstarter making their announcement, I just kind of like knew immediately, like, no, I can't stay with Kickstarter now. We'll just try it. We'll hope it works. The great thing about Kickstarter was that it got me in front of a lot of different people, which then I could kind of, try to sell to a bigger crowd. And thankfully, that plus, all the other people that I had met off of Kickstarter, it worked out, which I am forever grateful for. It's in a large part thanks to Fiona. She was able to, with the help of some other people, kind of piece together the code um, on the storefront to get it to work, which is something I would not have been able to do. I was just going to Photoshop a bunch of stuff and update a picture of like a progress bar, every couple hours. I was going to do it the really old school kind of difficult way. And Fiona made it so much easier. And I do not doubt that it helped the project just because it had that sort of familiar look to it. Um, but yeah, it was definitely the Kickstarter announcement definitely had a big part in it.
Yeah. Awesome. And I meant to prep you for this ahead of time. So if you don't want to respond, don't. You don't have to. I rarely ever want to pop a pushback question on somebody. So I use, and to clarify, I use Shopify for my e-commerce stuff, right? So Kickstarter has made the blockchain announcement. Shopify also has an ecosystem that's very supportive of and friendly to NFTs generally. Like you can mint NFTs through Shopify, a lot of other things like that. You're a Shopify site, so it's built into a Shopify store. Like, can you weigh that out for me and talk a little bit about your thought process there? Like I said, I'm in the exact same boat as you are, so this is not meant to be a damning critique or anything, but I do think it's one of the things that comes up a lot within this specific conversation.
Yeah, and it's something I understand. I have the same questions. When it comes to Shopify specifically, because the same thing can be said about PayPal, which is something that most people I feel like are intertwined with in some way or another. When it comes to these companies that sort of hold their capital above other people's morals, like their customers' morals, it for me comes down to exactly what I can do at any given moment. And so one thing that I have been talking about with Fiona is moving off of Shopify. Um, that just requires money and time to build a website that doesn't even use it as a backend. And so it is something that I am trying to do. It just requires, finding a payment processor. It requires paying somebody to build the website and all these other things.
Yeah. No.
So it's the same reason why I don't necessarily blame people for still using Kickstarter. Like sometimes this is just, it's not the people I feel like we can really criticize. It's the companies. It's our right as consumers to criticize companies, and choose where we spend our money with them. And I would not, take it the wrong way if somebody said they refused to use my site because of, Shopify. It's just something that I kind of have to deal with, and I am trying to deal with it. It just takes time and money.
But interestingly, those people are going to be like, "Can I just PayPal you directly instead?"
Yeah,
you know,
and then it comes to PayPal.
That's not to create a straw man or anything else like that. It goes back to that reality. But it's what can you do? Like I know for me, a big part of the statement was, yes, I don't like blockchain, and yes, I don't like NFTs. Some people's response to that has been, I think, saying this is what Kickstarter is doing, and the reality is whether we like it or not, we don't know. And for me, the bigger part of it is the systematic issues with using Kickstarter as the tentpole for how we all do our stuff. And I think anything we can do to help creators move off of that. But also the other thing being like, yes, using Shopify is supporting a corporation whose mindset embraces NFTs, but as an individual, I still don't have to use NFTs or NFT supporting things in order to specifically navigate my site at the moment, right? We don't know where Shopify is going to go either, but that agency and that choice matters to me a whole lot also too. So, I can totally. If somebody was like, "Can I send you a check in the mail?" And
yeah, sure, go ahead.
And then will you send me a book? Absolutely, I will.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't suggest sending an envelope full of cash during the mail, but like that works also. If you want to send me gold bullion or just swap games, like that's great too. Like let me know. Hit me.
100%. Yeah.
So I really love that. Tell me about, you already mentioned Fiona helped with the implementation on this. Tell me a little bit about kind of what it was like kind of stepping out with that the first time. That was with Wizards. Like I said, you've got Crush Step up right now, but what was it like to take this project you've been working on for the last little bit and kind of put it in the hands of this new process? What was the internal process like for you? What were some of the considerations you made? And for people who are looking at maybe doing this on their own in the future, what might be some advice that you have for them?
Well, I have to say I was extremely lucky. I feel like that's kind of the difference between calling something crowdfunding or saying you're kickstarting something is that Kickstarter does make it easier for people who do not have a crowd um, to fund things because it is the crowd. Kickstarter is the crowd. It has its own audience. It's something that's one thing I was definitely thinking about. And really, the only thing that I had to, I guess it wasn't a decision. The one thing that I had, in the air, unsure of as I went into this was, do I have a big enough crowd? Do I have enough people who want, the stuff I make to do this? And that was yet to be seen. And it had surprised me that it happened as quickly as it did. I believe it was 2 days before we funded, which kind of blew me away. I was expecting it to be the last day when we finally ticked over the last dollar. But yeah, as for anything else I thought about before that, it honestly didn't feel any different than Kickstarter did. I guess I didn't really see it even as being different functionally than Kickstarter. I was basically just going to take orders on my shop, which is usually what I do for Kickstarter anyways, just to collect shipping information. So not much really had to change. All that changed was the fact that I was unsure, whereas with Kickstarter, I was a bit more sure things would turn out. As for advice for other people trying to do it, the sad reality is I was very lucky that I have people already. I think if you want to get started in this industry, and I even made a YouTube video about this sort of because I was thinking about the very same thing. It just requires time. It requires time and patience um, and dedication, and then after that comes like the luck part. That hopefully people will find your stuff and hopefully people will like it. Um, so my only advice is that if you want to do this, you just got to do it and you got to keep going. I think the best piece of advice I got was from Dan Sell, the Troika creator, and he told me, "Don't fear the abyss." If this is what you want to do, you just can't be afraid. You just got to do it because at some point it's not in your hands anymore. And I feel like I got very fortunate and lucky to have found people and for people to have shared my stuff far enough that I have the ability to keep doing this at least for now. We'll see how the next one goes.
Yeah. No, I've been watching. I have put Crush Depth in my cart a couple of times and then have not checked out because I keep on going and looking at other books you have on the site that I don't have yet and reading through them and then getting distracted by my family. So got people. Y'all have funded now. Like you're over the funding mark. So you have 100% success rate with across all
so far,
projects in using the slow funding process. And I think that speaks a lot to the ability to, again, create that ecosystem for yourself. It's what people should be looking to. I think we're going to see tomorrow, Geon's going to release the Snow Queen directly to people. I think we're going to see a huge response to that. There's Geon's already has over 1,000 people on the email list for the go live date. I think it's going to be a tremendous launch moment for her, and I'm really glad that we're seeing that. But it does feel a little singular at this point. Like a lot of the critique I get about my success at my first Game Found project is one of the early RPGs is like, well, other people can't do that. And I'm like, well, yes and no, right? Like I wasn't a huge name, but I've spent the last year building an ecosystem that helps support the projects that I run. And I spent the last year playing this game publicly with a lot of different creators, players, and people, so that when we launched, we had plenty of buy-in into exactly what we were doing. And that helps. But does that mean it's singular? No. What I think we want to encourage people to do is start to think about how are you doing that for yourself, and whatever platform you're using, how are you becoming non-dependent on that platform? Because I don't want people to move over to GameFound, even though I like it better, and just become dependent on a new, different thing outside of their control. I want them to build systems for themselves. I think it's really great that you have been able to do that within this context. And so I'm, like I said, I'm super excited. Anybody who wants to hear more about Crush Depth specifically, come back on Wednesday at 3 p.m. We're going to talk to Amanda about Crush Depth Apparition and get into the nitty gritty of what the game is and the last of the Bad Boat trilogy. If y'all have questions specifically you want to ask about slow funding, about other games that Bats has done, about any of the work that Bats has been up to recently, feel free to drop those in the chat. We'll bring them up as we go. But I want to talk a little bit about Wizards a little bit more, and then swing over to your last video creation that made some big waves, and talk about that a little bit also too. But as we talk about the different things you've made, one of the things that always strikes me about the way that you do design, and it's one of the reasons I clarified, like, I'm happy to leave negative space, I don't like leaving empty pages, right? You provide plenty of space in your books for art, and for negative space, and for the layout to really speak something unique on a page to page to page basis in a way that I find very few designers actually give that space. I think Dungeon does this incredibly well. The layout for the Wizards and the Wastes does this incredibly well. Every book I've ever picked up from you, every page is doing something singular and unique and saying something very specific about the game. How do you do that?
Well, I hate to be one of those artists who's like, I'm not sure, I just kind of do it.
It's fine. It's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's probably thousands of tiny little things that I have picked up over the years that I have been working, writing, all of those various things that I wish I could remember and point to specifically and be like, this is where I found this. But I think what it comes down to, at least for me, when I decide to write something or when I feel the urge to write something, at least when it comes to games, is I'm trying to make something that like 13-year-old me would see in a store and have to pick up. And that's mainly the only goal I have. For the most part, I get a lot of questions about my games, like the rules and things like that. And for the most part, I don't care if they're like playable in a traditional sense. I just want them to be irresistible. I want you to want to pick them up. It's why I usually don't have the title on any of the covers of the book. I just have like art or some sort of image or something. And I just want, I just want people to feel compelled to pick it up, and then hopefully they get something from the writing after that. But for the most part, even as a game designer, I'm not very interested in people playing my games. I would rather them just read them, I guess.
So I
So I
think,
focus on that.
no, I love that, and I love that because actually, like in the last couple of weeks, I've been talking a lot. Like most designers, and I said not all, but most designers are like, hey, I made this game to be played, but not all game books are designed to be taken in that way. So I love hearing somebody who has that book thing of like, I have a thing I want you to do with my book. I don't want you to buy it and let it sit on a shelf, but I want
Yeah.
I want you to buy it. I want you to read it. I want you to look through it. I want you to experience wonder and awe as you're going at some part of this. And I love the lens of like, I want you to do it in the way that 13-year-old me would have. So let's talk specifically about Wizards and like what is the thing that 13-year-old you would have been in love with out of your most recent book?
Well, 13-year-old me had not actually seen Ghibli films at that point, so that probably would have been, hopefully, the moment of understanding, like, I guess this idea of like freeform magic, or just like the concept of magic, and it being something that you could do. It's kind of hard to explain. I feel I think I talked about it a little bit when I was running the crowdfunding itself. Um, but the idea of the book being like an actual spell book, and kind of looking like one and feeling like one and having this texture to it, um, I would hope that if younger me had picked it up, they would be inspired, to make something. That would be my goal, to pick it up and just to read it and to be like, I have to do something with this. Maybe they try to convince their friends to play it, but for the most part, I hope it is like a source of magic, and that you pick it up and that you read it and you feel inspired to make something from it. Because those are the things that usually stick with me the most, even as an adult when I watch or read or participate in something. If it inspires me to make something, it goes up in importance in my heart, and that's kind of what I would hope younger people or older people would get when they pick up, especially Wizards in the Waste. Um, just this feeling of magic.
Yeah, it's really funny. Roland in the chat was like, confirmed. All Bats works are lyrics games, which. But I also like one of the things about your games. I could see myself sitting down and playing any one of them. Like they're not there. It's very clear how you play from. So it's very interesting that you have a perspective that is very much. I'm writing the literature I want you to read without in any way, shape, or form abandoning the playable concept behind that and the clarity of the playable concept. And I think a lot of that comes from, again, you taking that space, like having a 2-page spread that's a Wizards application. Like that's a really fun piece, and it's a really fun thing that almost immediately gives permission to, like, yeah, if you don't like one of these, great, pick another one. Say something else in the same vein. But it makes it very clear at the table, like even if it's just a character background concept, here's a thing you can do with this, right? Here are things that are going to come up as you do it. Here are the items you need for play in addition to the character that you're creating. It's immediately suggestive in a way that I think a lot of people will complain about lyric games not being, and I would say to those people, read more lyric games and then learn to parse out how they are written and what they're intended to. But like I said, for me, one of the most beautiful things about your games is you do it without sacrificing evident playability. And that's one of the things I think I'm always drawn to about your design as well, and why I tend to pick up anything that you put out. That's why I was like, I got to go back through and figure out what I haven't got, because there's like 2 or 3 things at this point that I need to pick up. And I'll just, when I check out for Crush Depth, I'll just put them all in the cart at once. And so, but Fiona's trying to communicate some essential business things to you right here in the middle of the interview, but we're going to go ahead and do that because I like to honor the chat. Bats, if you want the funding percent for us to be printing in color, I can update that as the goal forever for CDA. Not writing the title out because it's high, and I don't want to misspell it. Also, what are channel points and what is this? What are channel points and what is this UI and like what? Oh, channel points. Channel points are a thing I've done, and I haven't done anything with my channel points. Also, Highland Paranormal Society is the first one to ever redeem channel points. And once their comment highlighted, and that comment is Bats Rules. And so if you want to get back to Fiona right now or later on any of those things, feel free to.
Fiona,
I just switched over. Like I've been able to be an affiliate for like over a year now. I just never turned it on. And I just turned it on. I haven't done any of the work to get it. So, hey, if anybody out there wants to sub to help support the stream, please feel free. Go ahead. I'd rather you go donate on my Ko-fi if you want to. But if it's easier for you to do it here, feel free to. We'll have weird emojis and stuff coming up and all that fun, dumb Twitch stuff that everybody loves. So, do you have any you want to give Fiona the go ahead on that, or do you want to just talk about that offline? Or?
No, I could just message Fiona later, but Fiona's awesome. People should hire her if they want to get this progress bar or any sort of work on their website, because Fiona is doing the work. And without her, like I said, I would have been doing it the hard way, and things might have turned out way different for me.
Yeah.
So.
Love it. Amanda's also clarifying some things in the chat also too. So I'm glad we're getting business done here also too. JP, if this is your first time, welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Like I said, fan of your work too. But yeah, we get a lot of designers in here, and it's a very much oftentimes a family chat. So feel free stop by anytime. And so hey Trasharama, thanks for the sub. We're successful and know what we're doing. The no, I like I said, I've been a big fan of it. I love watching the success that you've had as you've continued to grow that, and you've made a lot of very intentional choices for how you do it. And it's one of the reasons I always just love being able to sit down and chat with you, or to kind of learn a little bit more about what you're doing and kind of how this process went. What are some like, so you now can do slow funding. Obviously, you're not looking to create the next Kickstarter, the next game founder, the next whatever.
Yeah.
And you may not know this yet, but what are some of your plans going forward for how often you want to be or are thinking about doing the slow funding process on your site?
That's a good question. Amanda came to me, like, this wasn't something that we had planned out. Amanda came to me, kind of with the same thing that I had with the Wizards, where I didn't want to use Kickstarter, but she wasn't exactly sure what to do. And then somebody mentioned, like, "Hey, ask Bats about that." And so this is the first time I've ever, I guess, hosted something for somebody. I have helped publish other people's stuff before. I helped Sam publish the Fortal zine, which is super good. And it's something that I'm very interested in. It's something that because I like project managing. I feel like that stuff is very easy to me. And it's the same thing with fulfillment. I love packaging packages. I love sending them out. All those various things. So it is something that I would love to explore more for other people who are interested. I'm hesitant to say, like, "Hey, everybody, just send me your stuff," because I'm it's literally just me. I'm the one who does it, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Especially when it comes to my future plans. Like, my big future plans right now are to make a website. Beyond that, I kind of have vague ideas for what I would like to do, what I would like to try to fund next. But right now, I'm sort of just riding the wave. I'm maybe not the best businessman. I don't make a lot of choices. I'm not good with schedules. I just sort of go with my gut, and that's what I have been doing. And that's why I say I'm very lucky that things have worked out. I feel like other people kind of have, they have business meetings where they write down, how much money they have. And I'm very much just kind of like, I'm just going to do this until I can't do it anymore. Um, and I've been doing it for a year, so that's good. I think the next big thing that I will be working on will be a continuation of the support for Dot Dungeon, because I've had people playing that in my Discord, which has been fun. There have been people asking questions about reprints, which I would love to do, but I want to make kind of another book to go with it. I don't know exactly what that is yet. I have vague ideas, but that I feel like will be maybe the next thing I do sometime in the middle of the year when it comes to crowdfunding.
Awesome. Love it. I'm super excited to see what comes next. And as from one bad business person to another one, I appreciate all that stuff. Like, we're like, oh man, somebody the other day was like, "I implicitly trust your managerial abilities," and I was like, "You should not." like
I do not have training in this.
am I good? Am I good at keeping people moving, even when they like checking in, giving people space, following up when I need? Absolutely. As long as nothing depends on me, we're golden. If I just have to keep other people on task, great. Awesome project manager. Do not give me tasks. Everything will fall apart.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And so no, like I said, big fan. Let's talk a little bit about your most recent video. So people who don't know, you put out really on a fairly regular. Now that doesn't mean like super often, but a
Yeah.
consistent basis. Really great reflections on different things happening in RPGs, games, design, other spaces like that. Your most recent one was an about hour-long video on the alt-right in RPGs, which is was such an interesting, like, and needed conversation. I think for a lot of us who are in the middle of design, and we see a lot of what happens in our play spaces and in design spaces with that. And I think there's a whole other portion of the RPG population that is like, did we need to have this conversation? And I think your video did an excellent job for anybody who watched it of saying, yes, we do, and here's why. Uh, like, the fact that some of us very clearly see this and other people are totally unaware is specifically the issue. And I was even talking to Jarrett Crater the other day about, like, there's a certain level of where if I ever find myself at a play table with like 4 other white dudes, for lack of a better term, like, I am incredibly terrified that one of these people I may be sitting down and having a very enjoyable time with is a horrible fascist, like, and that lives in the back of my head
Yeah.
rent free at some point during that process. I'm very protective of the spaces that we create here on Plus One, from making sure that bad actors don't come in. But as you desire to grow your community, it's very hard to address some of those things. So I was very appreciative of that video. Can you talk a little bit about some of the specific, and don't rehash necessary things in the video? People should go watch it. I'll drop a link in just a second. But what led you to decide that this is a video I want to make right now?
That's actually a nice story, I guess. So I had seen the incident on Reddit occur. I had been shown it, and I follow Lucas, so I saw him posting about it on Twitter. And it was when I looked at that, I had gotten. And when I was more looking at the response to that, I had a huge bout of anger. And spite and anger are very good fuels. So I was being angry with, talking to people like, this is ridiculous. What's happening? The things they're saying are very reminiscent of things that people in the alt right would say. Mainly the idea of destroying something that you love, and just I kept that phrase just kept ringing in my ears as I started to look into it and saw more people saying that. And then eventually I made a tweet. I made a very innocent and very vague tweet. And when I posted it, I had several people angry with me that I was being vague. And they were like, name names. You need to name names of these people. Otherwise, you're just being vague for vague's sake. And I was like, at that point, I was just like, okay, I will name names. And then I started writing. And as I started writing, I started researching. And as I started researching, I started saying the same things popping up over and over again, the same people, them saying very similar things. And I started rewatching and rereading some of the things that had helped kind of educate me, and being like, hey, this all seems to be fitting with the very same patterns that have happened in many other scenes. I don't think tabletop is the only scene
Yeah.
with an alt-right problem. It's at this point, it's an America problem, it's a Europe problem. It's all over the place. It has nothing to do with the scene in particular. They just sort of are able to hide in scenes, and so both the anger and like literally being challenged made me write. And I wrote as fast as I could while still researching. Um, and several points during that research, I had these moments of doubt where I was like, "Am I thinking about this too much? Am I being cruel?" Essentially, I felt like maybe I'm being a little too cruel to these people. And then I would just read a little bit more about them and be like, oh my god, they said something that is really horrible. I don't feel bad anymore. And that happened multiple times. Like, that cycle kept happening even after the video came out. I had this immediate feeling like, oh, I should not have released that. This is going to be really bad. uh and then I would read something else and be like, oh, I didn't go hard enough in this video. And that sort of happened again, the cycle just over and over again of my self-doubt and then being proven right, by their reaction, by other people's reactions, looking even deeper into things and having people DM me on Twitter and being like, hey, you didn't mention this in the video. I'm kind of surprised. And they would link to something horrible that these people have said or done, or that they supported. And at this point, I mentioned this to you kind of before the thing. I'm kind of past the video now. I'm working on the next thing. But I kind of rested firmly on the what I did wasn't mean, like I had maybe feared it was, but also that maybe I have a lot more to talk about. There's like a whole bunch of other people like Alexander McCree that I didn't even know about at the time and have learned too much about now. But I don't really want to make a follow-up video to it at this point. But I've kind of hit the point where I wasn't harsh enough, and there's even more that I need to talk about. But hopefully, the point I think that I was trying to make in the video is that, and maybe something I wasn't very clear about, is that I'm an American. I have a completely American perspective. I grew up in a small town in the middle of Illinois. I know what racists think like. My parents were racist. I'm not afraid to say that. My town, 3,000 people. They were all white. It was a very insulated society that I grew up in. And this idea, these beliefs and these thoughts that these people have and have held on to for upwards of 20 years for some of these people, even older if they're older. This is a lot of times it's America speaking through these people. These are American beliefs. And something that I have been struggling with recently is kind of coming to terms with how much of myself is me just parroting back what America told me to,
Right.
what they raised me to say. And figuring those things out is part of the work of being hopefully a good person. But also, I feel like, rehabilitation is possible for people who maybe are on the wrong side of the fence and don't even know it. Because like I said, you grow up in it. It's just kind of, that's life for a lot of white people growing up. And so the hope for the video is that if I don't reach you, maybe you watch one of the very much better researched and organized videos that I link, that helped me kind of see these things, and that you can, be self-critical, and realize that, maybe it's not your fault, but you still have to do the work
Yeah.
because this is how I mean, primarily white people are raised in America. And like I said, I can only speak about America because that's where I'm from.
Right. And
but that was my hope, I think. Hopefully it was a hopeful point.
yeah. And not to be
in the
too
video.
not to be two white guys patting each other on the back, but one of the things I really appreciated about your take is you're kind of in the second stage of the deconstructive process around that. And a lot of people think the end is the end of the first stage. Like, I no longer think that way, right? But there's a second stage, and this comes with religious trauma, with political realities and the way that our country speaks to itself, with anything that culturally wraps us up, right? The first stage is deconstructing away from the toxic idea. The second one is getting ourselves to a place where we are able to speak clearly, with emotion, like not dispassionately, but clearly around the issue, without getting totally consumed by the rage side of things. And I do think you did an excellent job of keeping that true deconstructive process engaged as you go through that, because it's fine to have rage around those issues, but we want to make sure that when we're having that rage and that passion, that it is in a place of clarity and not a stance of, look what they've done to America, which we can be upset about, but oh wait, no, this is where America is at. And in order to get it to a different place, I have to actively change the minds of people around me. And I have to do it in a way that isn't sheerly reactionary, but is actually intentional and going somewhere. And I think the conversation that you started in that video opens us up to a much better way of thinking about that. While we still all need to not rest on our high horses and be like, yeah, I'm going to say what, like, we still need to keep on going. And I think that's such a, that process, that cycle that you're talking about is really a good sign of, like, kind of being on the back part of that process, or the second stage of that process. When I say back half, I mean there's two halves of it, and you're in the second one, not that you're necessarily almost perfect. You're not about to transcend. But again, I think that's such an important part, and I think the tone by which you hit those things, like, people who are not ready to be convicted of those things aren't going to be convicted by that video. People who are already thinking that way are going to see a clear, rational, decently researched, pointing to better sources, response to that takes ownership of your own roles within that, and is actively trying to move to a better place. And I think that's such a huge part of why I loved watching that video during that entire thing. And so, and if you haven't watched it yet, I'd encourage you to go over to John's YouTube channel, check it out. If you have any questions about that, we're almost out of time, but feel free to drop them in. Given the responses are Saturday morning cartoon villains screeching mixed with ethno-nationalist talking points, you were remarkably fair to pretty unlikable people. A blurb for the YouTube was from Fiona.
Yeah,
From Fiona. But no, absolutely. And so I really appreciate it. I want to encourage people again. I'm going to give a little bit more time for questions. We talked about 4 projects today that I want you to go check out, as well as checking out what's happening over the Nerve store and one other pitch from us here at Plus One EXP. And those projects, again, in short order, that we talked about were, where are they again? The Archon Ruins, which is by Alex, aka Nard Monster, who does just phenomenal work in a lot of different ways. I'm going to pop that map up for everybody to see one more time. Just beautiful vibes. And Bass has had a chance to work with them. I'm going to get a chance to work with them and Lucas on an upcoming piece for our itch funding project for Through the Void. I'm super excited about that. We also had Banda's Grove, which is a belonging outside belonging / no games, no dice, no masters, and We Sail Beyond Hex Crawl about quantum campgrounds. So it's a very free-form, cozy slice of life campground that you're building using the We Sail Beyond protocols by Sealed Library and some other similar inspired mechanics. It's very, very cool. Discordant Topia, which is a phenomenal system agnostic setting piece. Go check out any of these projects. I'll drop their link in the chat, or they're in the descriptions as well. Or Fabled Paths by Flux. People are asking about Count Nugula down in the chat. I'll give a Vamp Nugula update. Hold on. Was not what I was going to talk about, and not what if you're going to support something I'm going to talk about for us, it should not be Vamp Nugula. Even though at the time of us watching right now, Vamp Nugula is less than a combo meal's cost away from getting a new friend. Vamp Nugula is 90s fast food mascot inspired Troika backgrounds. We currently have Vamp Nugula. No. We currently have the Burger Bandit. We currently have Boxer Beefs, who is inspired by but legally distinct from Champs from Jollibee. And we have the Grim Ace, who may or may not be Grimace inspired. $4 from now, we will unlock another friend. Oh, so no, we also have not art done or writing done yet for Little Pizar, which is may or may not be inspired by Little Caesar's mascot. So in $4 we'll unlock and vote on another mascot that we will make.
That's
so
wonderful. Why have I not heard about this?
Have you not? This is
No.
So I made a vampire chicken nugget background for Troika because Levi told me I had to. And you can go to ttrpg.link /vampnugs to check it out. And then I just put it up, and then Zemo was starting, and I just finished Through the Void, and I was like, I'm not going to fund anything. And then I was like, well, shit, this was really easy. And then Thomas Novosel did some amazing art for it. And I was like, hey, Thomas, if I did like 10 or 30 more of these, would you want to do art for all of them for the same deal? And Thomas said yes. And so
Thomas is great.
we did it. Yeah, there's a D6 table for 6 Eldritch sauces that you can dip in, which includes like things like honey custard or screamy ranch.
Oh my god.
So anyways, you can go check that out. If we get $4 more, that's not. Here's the thing. Feel free to go back that, please, if you want to. What I actually would love to have anybody out there who's viewing right now help with is 13 Hunters, which is the project we are helping support and on the team for. It's the only Zemo project that's over on GameFound right now. You can go to ttrpg.link /13h to find out more about it. But I'm a big fan of GameFound. I'm a big fan specifically of the human touch GameFound gives to its backers. They like individually check every page just like Kickstarter does, except for they actually like send me things they like about it. The CEO sends me an email the morning it's launched. They sent me a box of goodies at Christmas to thank me for funding on there last year. Like, and I was the smallest project on the platform to date for funding. Like, I mean, like it's a very cool company. They just got a lot of money from Ravensburger, which is another company that I do really love in the board games industry. So they're going to be able to accelerate a whole lot. But we're behind the funding curve right now. I will say that we still have plenty of space in front of us on the campaign. We've got 18 days left, but I would love to hit $1,000 at least before tomorrow to keep us on track for that. But it's not by me. It's by Nobisk, Nuclear Obelisk. Some people might know them as Dom Leotti, who did the Power Words magic system last Zine Quest, which was a tremendous and phenomenal piece of design. The visual design on this is all Dom. The words are all Dom. But the information design in this zine and the minimalist concepts that are baked into it are genius. And I would love to see it be better supported than it currently is. I'll be talking about it all month long until it funds on these streams. So feel free to continue to hear about it. But we did also use it to run a Through the Void session where I threw 3 of these 13 bounty hunters that are science fantasy based, so they can go into a sci-fi, fantasy, your favorite troika setting, whatever you want to throw them into. It's very easy to convert them in, and it's going to be like a vertical flip book, so it's going to be the A5 size, but it'll actually feel like flipping through a dossier of things. And so you'll have the big image here, and you'll have the. Anyways, I'm super excited. Please go support the project. Every system is Troika compatible. It is true. And it is improved by Troika's initiative. So if you haven't got to check out the project yet, I would really, really love to. If we get to $1,000 today, I would be emotionally satisfied. Nuclear is like very satisfied with where we're at so far. New moving over to GameFound would be a risk. I take a lot of emotional ownership over other people's projects that I shouldn't. And I would really love to see this one succeed because it is tremendous. So please, people, go check it out if you are able to. It's absolutely gorgeous. A couple things that we have coming up that I want to tell folks about. Like I mentioned a couple times, this Wednesday we've got Amanda Lee Frank, who is currently funding Crush Depth Apparition over at nerves.store, is going to come specifically talk about that project. Come on back for that if you want to. We also have Grok happening on Thursday. Grok is part of Zemo. It is if you like Troika, if you like Rules Light OSR games, if you like systems where the words that you attach to very abstract character concepts become very important when you're trying to do really cool things in play, check out Grok. We're going to be playing this Thursday night with a creator and some of our friends from the Exalted Funeral Discord server. On Saturday, we are playing Pirate Borg. Pirate Borg is a full reskinning of the Merkborg system for high seas hijinks. It introduced a 5th stat called Spirit for spells and other stuff like that, but it is a fully standalone game like Vast Grim was. We're going to be playing with Brian Collin, the creator of Vast Grim, as well as the creator of Pirate Borg and a few of our other friends as well. And let me see, do I have another one I want to talk about? Oh yeah, and finally, Down We Go's Pledge Manager is open, but we're hosting a jam next month for Down We Go, Through the Void, or DungeonDelvers.tv systems, or even new systems using the Together We Go SRD called Together We Jam. So if you want to make a very cool Rules Light OSR-ish game, it's a great time to do that next month. We'll have more details about that, or you can go to the link that I'll drop in the chat in just 1 second. There's a lot of stuff. We got a lot of stuff happening because it's Zine month. But I am super excited, Bats, about all the stuff that you've got going on. Anything you want to shout out, anywhere you want to point people for the best place they can support your work?
Yeah, right now that would probably be nerves.store. I'm running low on a lot of things. So if you want to get some of the few remaining books that are on my shelf here next to me that you can't see because it's off camera, please do. I will probably have a bit of a sale towards the end of the month because I'm moving in March, and moving with boxes of books makes it just a little bit more difficult. So getting rid of as many books as I can so I can afford to do some reprints of different things come March. So yep, nerves.store.
Awesome. If you're a creator out there who ever wants to come on and talk with us about the work that you're doing, there's a lot of people in the chat who I would be tremendously excited to talk with. Feel free, let me know. Over the course of the rest of this month, we're mostly talking to people who are looking at some form of alternate funding, and specifically Zine Month and Zemo creators. You can go to zinemonth.com to find out more about that. Plus One, contrary to what you might think, is not actually part of the organizing team for Zine Month. We're just the unofficial cheerleader and chief marketing officer of Zemo. I like to harass them and make their jobs harder and abuse my reputation within the Discord server. So anytime that you want to come on, feel free, please come do that. Support Vamp Nugs if you want, but 13 Hunters at ttrpg.link/13H is the number one thing I'd love to have your support on right now. If you want some bounty hunters to drop in, or even make into PCs, because they make really good PCs also too, into your setting, feel free to go over to that link, check them out, and see if it's something that you want to back. I'm the official beard of Zemo. It's not even the unofficial beard. I did. That's the one ask I had, was to be the official beard. With that said, this has been Prestige Class with Bats, and class is dismissed. We'll talk to y'all soon. Arg. I thought I was off, but I'm not. Arg. Come back for Morkborg Pirates. Arg.